President Trump is in New York today for the United Nations General Assembly, his second since taking office. In his speech last year, President Trump criticized North Korea and called the country's leader, Kim Jong-un, Rocket Man. Based on what we heard from the president today, it seems that he will be taking a different tone this year.
The relationships are very good with North Korea. We have many things in store. It looks like we'll have a second summit quite soon. As you know, Kim Jong-un wrote a letter, a beautiful letter, and asking for a second meeting, and we will be doing that. Tremendous progress on North Korea. Certainly, since we got here, it was a different world. That was a very dangerous time. This is 1 year later, a much different time.
CBS News White House correspondent Weijia Jiang is at the UN headquarters in Manhattan. Weijia, before we get to the UN news, how are the Kavanaugh and Rosenstein stories impacting the president's agenda there?
Tanya, he may be here in New York City, but those two bombshell stories that are developing in D.C. certainly have followed him here. To Nancy Cortez's last point, we heard him talking this morning, not about his agenda for the UNGA, but, of course, Judge Brett Kavanaugh, defending him, saying that the allegations are totally political. And all morning, we've seen also senior administration officials have had to answer questions about Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. Press Secretary Sarah Sanders sent out a statement in response to all the questions that she is fielding about Rosenstein. So certainly, even though they are here for one thing, Sarah Sanders is here, by the way, traveling with President Trump. They are answering questions about Kavanaugh and Rosenstein. And so I expect it will follow them through this entire trip, even though Sanders tried to squash it and say, look, at least until Thursday, he is going to be the Deputy Attorney General, saying that the two will meet when the president returns to D.C. from his time here at the UN.
Yeah, it's all on hold until Thursday. All right, so Weijia, with North Korea on better terms with the U.S. now, what do you expect from his speech tomorrow?
Well, he already gave us a preview, right, in that clip that we just heard. It's hard to believe that just 1 year ago, he famously coined Kim Jong-un as Little Rocket Man, and this year he's sort of taking a victory lap to talk about all the progress that has been made since then. But when you really look at what has happened in terms of concrete deliverables, it is not that much, and that is a question that this administration has to answer over and over again, that even though they are working toward a second summit, even though President Trump continues to talk about the beautiful letters and nice things that Kim has said about him, the fact is, there has not been evidence of denuclearization, of getting rid of the arsenal of weapons that already exist in North Korea. Now, that said, the question was about tone, and certainly President Trump has a much different tone this year, one of optimism, of progress, of all the work that he has already done to combat Kim's nuclear ambitions. And so we just heard from Secretary Pompeo, and he said he's very optimistic, acknowledging that there's still a lot of work to do, but certainly anticipating that second summit to happen sometime soon, without giving any details, of course, about when that might be, where that might be, and how the strategy will be different from the first time.
Of course. So, no, of course, this speech comes after the U.S. exited the Iran nuclear deal. Do we know how the president might address U.S. concerns with Iran?
I think he's absolutely going to double down on that decision, even though allies continue to say Iran is not violating the Iran nuclear deal, because it is, of course, still in place. And even though the president of Iran has said the same thing, that, perhaps President Trump expected some sort of deterioration and that they would also, remove themselves from that deal. The U.S. is alone on this when it comes to its allies, when it comes to Iran. But President Trump is also very firm that he believes it is the right move. And he believes that those economic sanctions, when they're back in play to their full effect, given more time, that it will be enough to put pressure on Iran. And aside from that, we also have seen a campaign developing by the administration to support Iranians who have taken to the street to protest and to voice their concerns over what's happening with their continuously crumbling economy there. And so the bottom line, though, is that President Trump, I do not believe, will shift at all. He has indicated that he believes it was absolutely the right move, that he thinks this is the way to go when it comes to controlling Iran's nuclear ambitions.
And
I will say that Secretary Pompeo has said that the president is open to talking to President Rouhani of Iran if that invitation came up. But it's hard to imagine what that conversation will look like, because clearly neither of them is going to budge in terms of what they believe will work.
That would be a very interesting conversation indeed. Now, President Trump's appearance at the UN comes shortly after the U.S. cut funding for Palestinian aid. How will that factor into this week's summit?
Right. You know, that was a really controversial move that Israel, of course, supported, saying that it is stifling, that move stifles, the Israeli and Palestinian conflict, and they applauded the president for making it, while Palestinians were frankly upset because they believe it could lead to dire consequences. And so it is viewed by some as yet another example of the president's pro-Israel attitude after moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. And later this week, he will be meeting with the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. And we know they have a very strong relationship. And so he is receiving backlash on the one hand and support on the other. But it certainly was, a detriment to the organization that received this money in order to help the refugees from Palestine.
Weijia Jiang at the UN. Thank you.